All right, so what's going on, y'all? Appreciate y'all for tapping in with me today. I'm here just about to do an upload. I had an idea that I wanted to start doing different types of uploads to put up on the channel, just to keep the content out there for you all. And the idea that I had was I wanted to do a series on different black male content creators. You may be familiar with the fact that if you know the story behind how I kind of like came up with this process to start doing the content creation, I always tell folks that before I kind of jumped all the way in, I did a lot of research. That entailed me looking at different content creators, getting a good understanding of the space. Really just looking around to see what was out there, right? Who are the black men in the space? What are they talking about? What do they do well? What can I learn from them, regardless of their perspectives? And I'm going to tell y'all a secret, right? I haven't shared this with anybody yet, but I actually have a bit of a secret weapon. All right, let me put you on, right? So y'all know I've been married for almost about 10 years, right? So in my household, my wife is really like the early adopter. And me, I'm pretty much like a dinosaur, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Back in the early 2000s, when people started like text messaging used to annoy the fuck out of me. Like, I held out, like I used to refuse to text people up until I probably sent my first text message in like 2010 is when I sent my first text message. And at that point, it was just because the work that I was doing and the people that I was around, it was becoming an inconvenience for me to be the only one in the group, right, that didn't, use text messaging. So I begrudgingly adopted the technology and I started texting. But even today, like, I guess just being of that older generation, right, being a part of those so-called the geriatric millennials, we have a way where we just do things different. Like, don't text me if it's something that you can just call me about real quick, because I don't want to be like just texting like back and forth. Like, that shit used to annoy me. It used to really annoy me, and I'm going off on a tangent, but who cares, right? This is me, recording some content for y'all to give y'all an upload. But I am going to get into what the whole series is about. But y'all just bear with me, right? Can y'all do that? All right, cool. So, I remember like in the early like 2010s, right? I used to be annoyed as hell when I used to see people like walking and texting, especially like if you're like outside, you could like, I don't know, get hit by a car, you could walk into a pothole, just like, I don't know, like I'm just somebody who always needs to be aware of what's happening in my surroundings. Like if I'm in a building or an enclosed space, I never sit with like my back to the door. Like I don't know, I have situational awareness is important to me. So to see people forego their situational awareness for the sake of like walking and texting and staring at their phones, like that shit just always drove me crazy. But I digress. The reason why I brought that up is because I was saying that my wife is the early adopter, right? She's been on YouTube, right? She's had her YouTube account since 2005. So she's seen all the different iterations, all of the ebbs and the flows, the different content creators, those who've came, those who went. So she, for me, is like a walking library, right? So there are people who I never knew existed, but she just be breaking them down to me. I'll give you another good example, like Tariq Nasheed. Tariq Nasheed is pretty popular. I never, ever heard of Tariq Nasheed until 2016 when he was on The Breakfast Club. That was my first time hearing of him. But when he was on The Breakfast Club, my wife was like, oh yeah, like I know him from like back in the day, from YouTube, when he was creating content, doing like the pickup artist thing. So I find, that becomes very helpful because I get to learn about just different individuals, the evolution in their content, the changes in their thought. And I guess that brings me to tonight, right? Y'all know that I've pretty much come out and stated pause, right? Because people try to clip that up. I've come out. No, I've pretty much stated that, you know, my content is purposefully and intentionally situated within the Manosphere, right? The space on YouTube that we refer to as the Manosphere. And the reason why my content is here is because my audience, you know, I want to speak to Black men. My messaging is for Black men. So even this, you know, particular series that we're doing right now, this series on Black male content creators, again, is for Black men, right? But I was saying, my wife being around so early, she was able to tell me about like those early content creators, right? The proto Manospherians, so to speak, right? Before there was a Black Manosphere, there were already content creators in this space who were doing Manosphere type content, or at least what we've come to know the Manosphere as today, right? The Manosphere is actually evolving and changing. And I did an interview earlier with Brother O'Shea Duke Jackson, and I actually learned a lot. So I'm pretty hopeful for what this space can be as a source for building and helping to develop Black men. So I'm certainly looking forward to making my contributions, right? You know, this is one channel, but multiple streams of content. So, but yeah, let me go back. This is what happens when you don't have notes and you're just like kind of like really going off the top. But I am going to do a review here. But no, my wife was breaking down to me like who were those early kind of like forerunners before Manosphere 2.0, which is I think is Manosphere 2.0, the wall of leaders or whatever you want to call this shit would be like O'Shea, Brother Obsidian, and Angry Man. I think that those are, you know, the language that they use in the Manosphere. They refer to those brothers as the three kings, right? Those are the creators of this particular iteration. But prior to these folks, there was a brother, I believe he's from the Philly area, maybe Cherry Hill, whatever, but by the name of Sergeant Willie Pete. There was a brother who did content. He was called the Church for Black Men. They were like the forerunners of like the Manosphere content that you see today. But Sergeant Willie Pete went away. I don't know for what reason. But he's back now, and he's going to be, I guess, the first subject that I'm going to do a review on. Right, I still haven't structured these yet, so y'all bear with me. But you know, I'm doing reviews on Black male content creators, right? So, what do I have to say? What do I have to say about the Sergeant Willie Pete? I don't have anything negative to say about him at all, actually. You know, I find that the brother is a really talented, like, you know, he could almost be like a radio host because he's good at, you know, just doing like talk radio or talk podcasting, right? Like he's good at that. But what I really want to delve into is the evolution of Sergeant Willie Pete, because back in back in August, I was on a road trip. And I was traveling up from North Carolina, headed back home. And I was just, you know, of course, riding, listening to YouTube. And I came across a clip of Sergeant Willie Pete, and he was speaking, and I'm hearing him mention folks like Dr. Amos Wilson, John Henry Clark. You know, he's using talking points that sound very Black nationalist in their orientation. But I don't think that this brother is a Black nationalist, but, you know, critical of white supremacy. And, you know, even within his talking points, you know, he has like these moments of clarity, like as he's like weaving his thoughts together. But at the same time, there's definitely still evidence of like that double consciousness, you know, so he's not clear, but he's making progress, you know. According to my wife, you know, I guess his content back in the day, I don't know how much it's really changed, but I think that, you know, his earlier content from back in the day may have been more expressions of like, you know, red pill rage and a lot of anger about, you know, Black women and how things are going in the community. I think that he may, you know, using the language of this space where people talk about educated lames and the Poogies and the Ray Rays, I think he considers himself to be in the educated lame space. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. And brother, if you're checking this out, I welcome brothers to come on and dialogue. an engaged conversation around our, differences, around our politics, and around our worldview. So you are certainly always welcome to come on the show and chop it up with me. But yeah, I think that he was a self-professed, educated lame. And one thing about a lot of the men in this space who refer to themselves as educated lames, I think that they all carry a bit of resentment, towards the black community. I think a part of that resentment is probably reflected in their sexual frustration. Just growing up, girls were not necessarily desirous of, and it's just not, I won't even say it's just the girls. I would say us as a community didn't really show a lot of love, you know what I mean, to the so-called like educated lames, right? So if you were a sports player, if you were athletic, if you had charisma, you had swag, whatever, then, you probably fared a bit better in the community. But if you were somebody who didn't really have any swag to you, didn't have a mouthpiece, wasn't deemed attractive, or didn't have a talent that could be shown, via your athletic prowess, then you probably didn't get much attention. You probably didn't get much love. And I think that a lot of brothers who were in that bucket, carry, an air of resentment. And now that they have attained success, you know what I mean? They've gotten their education, they've gotten their degrees. They are working professionals now, gainfully employed, doing significantly well. They are who you would refer to, or who Kevin Samuels refers to as the high value men. Those brothers are now, a lot of them have this attitude like, well, the community gave me their ass to kiss, so now that I have it, I'm going to give them my ass to kiss. Like that's the spirit that I get from a lot of them. So I think that early on in this brother's content creation phase, I feel like that's kind of like the space that he was coming from. But again, I titled this tonight The Evolution of Sergeant Willie Pete, because I feel like that red pill rage or that educated lame resentment isn't as much a part of his content as I'm listening to it now. I have a clip here and I want to bring it up on the screen. This is he labeled this one of his oldies. So this is a radio interview or talk interview where him and another brother, and they're having a conversation on non-existent patriarchy. And as I'm listening to these brothers, I'm like, man, they share some similar points that I share. I think that the difference is, and I don't want to grade them on the same scale that I grade myself, because I'm operating using an organized system of ideological and political thought. They aren't. I think that they are using, their experiences. I think they're using anecdotes, but I don't think that these brothers would refer to themselves as Afrocentric or Pan-Africanist or Black nationalists, right? So in that regard, they haven't had the same level of political education that I've had. So that helps, my political education and background helps me to make sense and engage these topics in a way where I'm just a bit more consistent in my thought. And even without them having that, a lot of the conclusions that they are reaching are similar to my own. So I found this conversation really, really interesting. So I want to play it here. It's called Non-Existent Patriarchy. It's about 33 minutes long. I probably won't get through the entire thing, because one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody does a review on me and that shit is like 5 hours long, and I'm like, God damn, it's kind of like stalkers. How do you got that much time to just talk about a man? I don't really got that in me. But it's after midnight here, and I said that I was going to start doing this black male content creation joint. So it's about to be an upload just to get my skills set up. On my upload game. We'll figure this thing out as it goes. How they say, we'll build the plane while it's flying, right? So the structure and the format for what this segment will look like is going to change. It's going to be refined. It's going to grow. But I just thought it'd be dope just to have an opportunity just to talk about the different black male content creators in the space, and not just in YouTube. I'll talk about content creators who I see on Instagram that I think do a phenomenal job, that I look at and I'm like, yeah, I have to learn how they do it. Like there's some brothers over there that do amazing work. But on YouTube in particular, these brothers that just do great work, and they have different skill sets. I mean, some of them, the production quality might not even be great, but just their delivery and their ability to, you know, to convey their messaging is like, yo, I'm like looking and I'm learning, right? So I'll use this particular series, the Black Male Content Creator series, to just talk about different content creators that I've come across. I don't got to necessarily agree with them. I might not even like them, you know what I mean, depending on who it is. But if they doing something that I can kind of like take away from, right? If I can learn something about them, or just speak to their strategy, or just inform my audience of who the person is and what they do, well then, you know, it's a win-win. So let me go ahead and start playing this. It's called Non-Existent Patriarchy, and this is a good combo. I want y'all to check it out, because I was just having the same conversation with my brother Akil. Shout out to you. He's a content creator. Go follow him at All This Math if you're not following him. But we were having a conversation on Facebook about manhood, and I had said something to him about, like, you know, black men have basically outsourced our manhood. You know what I mean? Like, basically, manhood comes with a set of responsibilities and tasks, and it also requires the development and building of your own institutions. And all of the real material and adult-like responsibilities of manhood, we as a group have outsourced them to another group of men. So we don't have our own institutions, so we rely on their institutions, their economic institutions, their political institutions, their military institutions, their health institutions, like whatever. We outsource all the serious stuff to other groups of men. So I'm like, you know, we've outsourced our manhood. So it's like, it's no wonder that, you know, our women and our children have to go to other groups of men when they need to have their problem solved, because manhood is not something that we've maintained in-house. And when I'm listening to these brothers have this conversation, I feel like they're hitting a similar note. So without any further ado, that's my mediocre tutorials and reviews. But let me go ahead and play this. Get started.
We started off, we said the infrastructure, and we brought up, you know, that women are being brought up in, the environment they're being brought up in. I said last week, white women are coming from intact patriarchal communities. White women can be submissive. White women can be feminine because they are afforded the luxury to be feminine, because their men are collectively in a better position than they are. Reese, I believe his name was Reese. I'm on my wrong show. No, I think whatever the guy was saying last week, the other guy that was calling, where he said women do not have to submit when they're making more money. They don't have to. So in terms of, you know, the black men and black women getting together and whatnot, remember what I said earlier about, you know, women and their, you know, they're always looking to survive. You know what I mean? And the men are supposed to be looking to thrive, right? As Divine Brown put it.
He made an interesting point there, where he says women don't have to submit or be submissive if they're making more money. And I think, you know, there's an element of truth in that, in the sense that the woman, you know, right beside the man, she's doing adulthood, and we're supposed to be doing adulthood. So it's like, we ask for the woman in our community to pay deference to manhood, but the manhood that they have access to and their community does not provide them with the things that manhood is meant to do, right? Manhood in our community does not provide them with protection. It doesn't provide direction. It doesn't provide order. It doesn't provide institutions. It doesn't have an economy, right? So, you know, she therefore has to go into another man's, you know, economy. So it's like, you know, you can't say, I want, you know, you to respect me and do all these other things, but then also shirk your responsibilities as a man. So I kind of agree with where they're going so far, but let me just keep playing the tape.
Well, when they're with a man and the man's not providing that, they can just go off and run in the other direction, because you got to look at it like this. Women have never throughout history submitted to men without getting something out of it. There is no intrinsic aspect of submission. You got to think, if you were a woman, what would it take for you to submit to a man? Okay, a man's got to come with something that you can't provide for yourself. You bring about. You want me to answer that right quick, or you want me to let you roll? No. I just want to finish. I want to finish my point. I'm saying you gotta bring something more to the table, because a woman is acquiescing, you know what I'm saying, her own agency to follow you on your ship. It's almost like when I had the exchange with your co-host, and she was talking, and she threw the conditional on, well, I'd only submit or to a patriarchal structure if the ship was going in the direction that I wanted to go. Which,
and I think so. When I hear him talk, some of the things he's saying, I agree with. I think that when he starts to talk about like patriarchal structures, like for me, I guess the intellectual in me, but also the Afrocentrist in me starts to like, that's where like the waters get muddy, because when we start to conflate what manhood is with patriarchy, it's not really that simple. You know what I mean? Because patriarchy in and of itself is a system in terms, it's a hierarchical system in terms of how gender roles or gender dynamics are maintained or expressed within a particular collective. And that particular system is not one that is universal, at least in the way that it is operationalized or carried out, right? I'm looking up because I'm thinking, pardon me, right? But I'm just riffing here. I'm listening to the brother. He did make a point also at the very beginning where he talked about we speak about the level of femininity within our female counterparts, and we critique it. But his point that he made, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's similar to one that I always make, where I basically say that men are the sun and women are the moon. They basically reflect the light that they cast off or reflect the light that we give to them. So if you're looking at a black woman and you're saying, well, she's not feminine, well, then you have to look, because she's only a reflection of you. And at the end of the day, femininity is like a rose. And, a rose unprotected or that does not have a fence around it or a protective hedge is going to be roughshod. You know what I mean? Things are going to run right over it. So it's not going to be able to express its beauty and its softness, because it's going to have to deal with the harsh elements. You know what I mean? So I think that manhood in many ways is supposed to be that, protective barrier for the garden, for the roses. And when you look at a group of women, those women are a reflection of the manhood of the men of that group. So when we argue that, black women in America are just not feminine, they're so masculine, well, it's because things have been flip-flopped. You know what I mean? Black men have not been masculine, so to speak. And I hate using the term masculinity. Y'all know I don't usually use it. I focus on manhood and not masculinity, because masculinity gets very weird, especially like when you get into the academy. You start hearing I saw what's this guy's name, Sergeant Willie Pete did a video on this dude FD Signifier. He's like a black male feminist. And so like I think that when you get into the academy and the black male feminists and they start talking about masculinity, like the shit gets like really weird. So I focus on manhood because I never want to confuse the conversation. And I always make the argument that you can have masculinity and not have manhood, right? You can have masculine men and still not have manhood in the group, right? And the proof of that is if you just look at when we were enslaved, there were men who were very masculine. I mean, you look at the Jim Crow era, right? Very masculine, right? But we didn't have manhood, right? Manhood is synonymous with sovereignty, right? It's synonymous with control over your material world, the ability to influence and dictate what happens in the world around you, right? And manhood, again, is not something that is an individual pursuit. It's a collective enterprise. It's an office, right? It's the office of manhood. It's an institution or a system. So when you start to look at it like that, then you understand, like, okay, well, where are we deficient as men? Like, where the hell are our institutions? Like, where's our cooperation and trust among each other so that we can collectively build and establish that which we need so that our women can operate, right? Or rest in their feminine, as people like to say, right? I'm just borrowing some of the language. Let me keep playing here.
To me, it's obvious because you wouldn't even get on the ship if it wasn't going in the direction that you want to go. I mean, that should have been a no-brainer. But I'm saying, in order for women to submit to men, okay, they gotta have either a coalition of men that they're teamed up with, where they're building and creating. They can offer women protection. They can offer women provisions, roof, shelter, all that stuff, the whole infrastructure, like even with white women, what do they get? They get Hollywood.
You heard what he said, where you can offer women protection, provision, food, shelter. He said the whole infrastructure. Now, I guarantee you he's never heard my definition of manhood. He just basically said it right there. Where I always say that manhood is a system of order, protection, and direction that is expressed through institutions. He called it infrastructure, but expressed through institutions that is capable of meeting the vital needs of a people. What did he say? Food, clothing, shelter, protection, provision, vital needs. But, it isn't an individual thing. Like, this has to be institutionalized because the institutions also house the culture of the people. And that's another thing. When we talk about African manhood, you can't be like a chocolate dip European. You can't be using, Eurocentric values in their culture to try to, uphold black manhood. Because the woman is gonna be like, well, what do you like? You basically are trying to mock and do and ape what he does. Like, what do you do? What makes you a man? And this is another point when I was talking to O'Shea earlier. He was talking about, black men having a responsibility to raise themselves up to meet the global standard. And I'm like, nah, we have to go beyond that. We have to reclaim who we are so that we can set the global standard. I guess that's a good Freudian slip. The golden standard, because we are the golden standard. You know what I mean? We are the first men on the planet. We are the first builders of civilizations. You know what I mean? Like, the European is a baby on the planet. In many ways, he's homicidal, genocidal, and menticidal. So I'm just saying, we don't need to mock him. We need to tap in with who we are, because that's going to be, the well that we draw from to bring about the world that we desire to see, right? You got to have the vision, though, to see it. Let me let this brother keep rocking. And let me give this brother a round of applause, because I'm liking what he's saying. And I'm liking the evolution. So, brother, if you get this, reach out to me, my guy. I'd love to, just to build with you and chop it up, because I do want to start having more conversations with sensible-minded black men within the Black Manosphere. So, reach out to me, my brother. Let's chop it up. Let's see if we can get on one accord. Let me keep on playing this.
They get the red carpet. They get to be the beauty standard. Okay, there's a whole bunch of things that make white women walk around here like la-di-da-di-da, like they're...
Yeah, it's a lot of perks.
It's a lot of perks.
Yeah, listen, bro, last week...
We as black... Wait. That's point. We as black men, we are not collectively providing it. And we can't expect black women to behave like other races of women that are coming from these infrastructures that we don't have, with all the perks that we don't provide. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
Listen, like I said, y'all can go check out the whole clip on your own. I'm not going to play the entire clip, but I'm in agreement, right, with everything that I've heard so far, or most of what I heard so far. Like, I agree with. So that's why I wanted to, I was like, let me just do a quick review on this, because I thought that was dope. And the Manosphere is not monolithic. What I'll say is that there's about 80% of the Manosphere where most of the men in that space agree on, right? There's about 80%. But that 10 and that other 10, that's where you get the most hotly contested debates. Now, me personally, I probably would say that I probably agree with like 10 to 20%. And the reason why I say that is because that 80% that I first referred to is so Eurocentric, is so anti-African and anti-black, like the values of it, that like, I'm really coming in with like a sledgehammer, you know what I mean? But I gotta use a little bit of finesse, you know what I mean, to figure out how to have these conversations that influence the direction and the way that we think and see the world, right? How do I help to upgrade the lens and upgrade the thinking of some of the brothers in the space who are interested, or even open to different ideas, right? So just listening to this brother's evolution, clearly he's open to different ideas. And I loved hearing this brother drop Professor Amos Wilson's name, and Dr. John Henry Clark, because I'm like, okay, this is a brother who's a thinking man, who may have certain perspectives and he may have certain blind spots, but coming together, we can help to give him a bit more of a panoramic view, right? Fill in those blind spots with information, with history, with analysis that helps to sharpen him You know what I mean? Like they say, iron sharpens iron, right? So that's what it has to be all about. But family, I'm not going to keep chopping it up here. I just wanted to introduce y'all to a black male content creator that I listen to sometimes. I don't agree with the brother on everything that he says, but I do think that he's incredibly talented, and he shares some interesting perspectives. So go check him out. That's Sergeant Willie Pete. Again, I don't put he's responsible for whatever he says. I'm just saying that, like, I've found some of the points that he's discussed to be interesting. You know what I mean? I think that he still has a lot of baggage that he probably has to kind of like deal with, and that's perfectly fine. We are all, one thing I'm always going to do here is I'm going to hold room for growth. I want to hold room for growth so you can, I'm not going to condemn you, right? I told somebody the other day, like, because I don't want nobody to get my content confused. My content is not to condemn black men. My content is the condemnation of black manhood. There's a difference here, right? Because black manhood is the institution, or it's the building, right? That our people are housed within. And for me, this building is not really fit for occupation right now. So we got some work to do. We need to get the scaffolding up. You know what I mean? We need to adjust the foundation, because right now they're sitting on somebody else crumbling foundation. So we got work to do. So that's not a condemnation of black men, right? Because I believe that you have within you, a spirit or a spark that you can reanimate, and you can reconstitute everything that you see around you. And that's kind of like, although my words can be sharp and harsh at times, you got to be like that with men. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like tiptoeing through the tulips. You can't be pussyfooting around. Like, sometimes you have to be aggressive, like with men, so that it reaches them where they need to be reached. That's it. So this was my first black male content creator series. Just checking the brother out. Who knows? Maybe in the future y'all see a collab or a conversation between me and that brother. But to the brother, if you come across this, I salute you. I ain't gotta agree with everything that you're doing, but I recognize that you are using this space to put your voice out there for other folks to hear you. I want to let you know that I hear you. You've been heard. Ain't gotta agree with everything you say, but I do hear you. I respect our differences. I respect your opinions. I'm just looking forward to, adding my voice to the dialogue. So I appreciate y'all tapping in with me today. Y'all keep tapping in. I'm gonna be working on these uploads over here. I'm gonna get better. It's going to get better. You know what I mean? Like, this is what happens when you don't have notes. But listen, I'm learning as I go. All right. So I'll tap in with y'all soon. Look out for that interview with Brother O'Shea Duke Jackson. It's going to be dropping on Friday. Friday at 8:00 is a dope interview. I really enjoy doing it. I got a few of his joints on my soundboard.
Who you got my sounds?
That shit was hilarious. I didn't have this one on the soundboard before the interview, but it's going to be in our interview on post-production. But there's the other one.
Oh my God!
So O'Shea is a champ when it comes to the sound effects. But I'm tapping out, y'all. I appreciate y'all tapping in. Peace.